Welcome to Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood.
A podcast sponsored by California Rainbow.
Founded in 1922, Rainbow is a premier service organization for young girls ages 8 to 21. In California, we have approximately 60 assemblies.
These young leaders learn the importance of serving others and gaining lifelong sisterhood. Learn more at go.ca-rainbow.org.
Welcome back to Let's Talk About Leadership, Service, and Sisterhood, a California IORG podcast. Tonight, we have Ella and Bailey, two of our girls from our public relations team. They're going to be talking with Maryanne Kabour, who is a pediatric psychologist, a little bit about immortality, grief, and loss, and what they mean to us as teenagers these days. So, girls, go ahead. Ella, you wanted to start this off, right?
As members of this wonderful organization, one of our many lessons is of immortality. So what does immortality mean to you?
Thanks for the question, Ella. It's interesting when we first started talking about doing this podcast and thinking about immortality, my first thought was actually more like, well, it depends on your religion or things like that. But actually, when I started thinking about it, I realized that really what it comes down to, and again, everybody can have their own perception or thoughts about this, but in my world, I think about it as memory, like remembering and honoring the person who died. And that helps, create this sense of immortality, because obviously on earth, we are mortal, but it's when we're able to honor them that can create that sense of immortality. And I know for myself, I think when you lose somebody who's special to you, you may have objects that you hold on to and that are dear to you. And that then usually those objects then evoke, the memories and thoughts about the person. I know in my work, ways I honor the kids I work with when they pass is I have like a potted plant out front, and then I'll put kind of a little item or a stone or a memory object from them, and then use that as a way to kind of find the ways to honor them. So that's kind of what came up for me. And so I don't know if either of you, when you've lost a person, have set aside any items or memory objects that have helped.
I think that's such a good concept to have like memory objects of someone. That's something that you can honor them with. And I think that was really awesome that you brought that up. And so one of the questions we wanted to ask you was like, what can you do when a friend loses a loved one? Like, what would you recommend to help comfort them?
Mm-hmm. Yes, so it can be really tough. It's for those working in grief and loss, we talk a lot about like death is awkward. Even though it's a natural process of our life, people can start to feel awkward in not knowing, what to say to the person or how to help or what to do. And really what it comes down to is just being there, because death can create these feelings of awkwardness that, then they're able to know that, okay, this person I can just be with. And so it's not, I think sometimes when somebody's lost somebody, there may be the feeling of like, I need to help them or I need to fix this somehow. But a lot of times it's just being there, and letting them kind of stay and process what they want to do. Sometimes I think, people want to just go and do a normal activity. Others want to sit and cry. Others want to reminisce about the person. So it just depends, but really it's kind of the biggest piece is just being present.
And Ella, you had a question that kind of ties into this. You want to go into that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. So it's great to know what to do like with a person and the activities to do with them. And maybe some people want to sit there. Some people may cope through humor. Just so many people go through different things. But I feel like something that's happened to me in my own personal life, I recently lost my grandfather, and everyone just kind of comes up to you and says, I'm so sorry for your loss. And you kind of just have a blank stare looking up at them. Like, what am I supposed to say next? It's so awkward. And I know when my friends have lost family members, I don't know what to say to them. So what would you recommend as something comforting to say?
And it is so tough because there is not that one magical word. Even those of us working in, in this area, it's like, oh, I have to call this person. I don't want to be the, 100th person to say I'm sorry. And so usually, I think the piece to think about is like, what do you want to convey to the person? And so it is, I'm sorry is usually the first thing that comes out because you do feel badly for the person, for their loss. But I think it can also be like, I'm thinking about you. You can ask how you can help. One thing a lot of teens will talk about is also like, it helps if you can give something concrete to help with, versus sometimes people feel like they don't want to burden the person. So they're like, I'm here if you need anything. But then that kind of creates some distance. And so I think it's helpful to think about like, I'm here for you. I can, like, and make an effort to like call the person, because I think sometimes we pull away because we don't want to burden, and it's awkward and we don't know what to say. So I don't know for you, was there one person or something that was said to you that was helpful?
I feel like it was just definitely my friends that were there for me to just sit with me, and because I myself am a very reserved person. I don't really express my emotions very freely, especially sadness. So I feel like just having someone sit there, and I know one of my friends even came over and we just baked all day and we didn't talk about it, and we just sat there with our thoughts, and it was so much fun to just, sometimes ignorance is bliss, people say. So it really helped me with that.
And it's also, there's that piece of ignorance, but I think it's also like, it's not healthy, or we're not, able to really stay in grief all the time. Like, you need some breaks from it. And so that's important too. When we talk about like, how do you cope with grief, is like giving yourself some break from it, and not feeling like this person died, so I should feel sad all the time. I think younger kids really kind of show us, it's a different way of coping, but young kids generally, like, kind of, they're in and out of grief. Like, then they'll come back and say something or have a question, and then they go play. And so they have those breaks. Whereas I think the teens, and then as adults, we tend to feel like I should feel this way, or I should be doing these things.
I think you definitely kind of covered the next question a little bit about like, how do you deal with grief? Like, what's the best way to do that? I also, like Ella, recently lost my grandpa as well. And so my family, like, what we did was just kind of like connect with each other. Like, I didn't get to see my grandma for a while, so we like would call her every day and talk to her. And that was kind of like the way we coped with it, was just talking to each other in the family, since all of us were going through the same emotional like roller coaster that everyone was feeling at that time. But it was also one of those things where it's like, I grieve differently than some of my other family. So it's like, how do you find that common ground, and like, how can you find a better way to grieve with the people around you as well?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think, you're correct in your noticing that everybody grieves differently. And so that's the big piece. I think, sometimes we, again, get stuck in the, like, I should be doing this, or I should be feeling this. I think, even though, I don't know if you all have heard of the stages of grief. So even when that came out, it wasn't really meant like you're going to go through this each stage and then you're done, right? When you're after the last stage. But really what it is it's kind of like you just weave in and out, and you're going to hit different stages or feelings at different times. And I think the biggest piece, when you're grieving, is just to notice and kind of give yourself that grace. Like, okay, I'm feeling pretty angry about things today, or I'm feeling pretty sad. Some people, grieve by, pulling away socially and wanting to be alone and kind of process. Others feel pulled to be around others and to talk. So I think, within a family, when you're grieving, it's just finding ways to honor each person's way of coping. And then with coping, it's kind of the things we look at is really, the areas are your feelings, your thoughts, and like the physical impact of grief. So just noticing if you're having trouble sleeping, sometimes people have more or less of an appetite. And so, when you think about coping, we've talked about the feelings, like giving yourself that grace, honoring what you're feeling. With thoughts, just noticing what's coming up with the thoughts. Sometimes people, if the death is sudden, sometimes they can feel like regret, or feel like there are things unsaid. And so sometimes it can help to just write a letter to the person, and get those thoughts out. And then I think, physically finding ways to release some of that grief energy, because it is this heavy burden of sadness, and finding ways to kind of release it from your body too.
I absolutely love that you touched on honoring ourselves, because we are all different people and we go through everything so differently. And it's important to listen to ourselves and our bodies. And if we're tired, we need to sleep. And if we want to be with people, then we need to be with people. And often we talk about grief in the form of like the passing away of a loved one, but what other forms of grief and loss are there beyond that?
Yes, there are so many. Obviously, we've all been through the COVID times. And so, experiencing that breaking away of, your socialization, your ability to socialize, really. And then, as well as, when friendships break up, moving is another, grief process when you're, leaving what you know. And so I think it's noticing and honoring all the pieces, whether it's a friendship piece or changing location piece, changing schools. There's that grief feeling. A job can bring up feelings too, because it's something that and something you've gotten used to and connected to. So really grief is related those times when we're losing a connection of some sort.
I really like how you brought up like the different types of grief. Like it could be like just a friendship splitting up or anything like that. So I thought that was a really good point that you made there, because that's something that everybody kind of goes through, and they can kind of connect with and put each other in their shoes, and understand the perspective. So thank you for that. And then the last question we just had was like, how would you support these people like going through everything?
Like, how would you support a person going through grief? Or
going through grief, or it could be like if someone else they know is grieving and they're asking for advice, like how can you support those people?
It really, again, it comes back to being somebody they can reach out to, because I think that's the other piece with grief is it feels very alone. Even though there can be some commonalities, like if in losing grandparents, there's a lot of teens that at that age kind of start to lose grandparents, but still it's not, people don't know the exact experience you're going through. And so just again honoring what they're experiencing and being there for them, and I think just trying to be somebody that they can lean on. And again, there's no one way to say it, and so again, it's acknowledging, like, I don't know what to say, but I'm here for you. Like that, you could say that too.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, this has been really good discussion. Thank you very much, Maryanne, for coming in and talking with Ella and Bailey tonight. It's pretty clear that we can all experience grief and loss in any transition in life, and the best thing to do is to be there for our friends. So thank you all once again. This has been a podcast from California IORG, and stick around for our next one.